This demonstration is on viewing non-point data in input view. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on non-point sources on the left of the screen to open up input view to look at non-point sources. So you'll see it looks familiar to point sources in that the counties are on the right side of the screen. And first we're going to select the county we want to look at. So we're looking at Coconino County, so we're going to select that, and we're going to make this a little bigger so I can read all these county names. Now we'll click Coconino County, and then we're going to click on non-point processes on the left. And this is going to bring up all of the processes. And for non-point data, a process is like a source. So this is going to show us all of the sources that are in the NEI data for Coconino County. We can see, if we scroll down, that we have got 168 total non-point processes here, and the process description is not filled in for any of these processes. So we don't really know what these are because we don't have the source classification codes memorized. So when you're entering data on your own, we highly encourage you to fill in the process description so you can know. For example, you just want to look at the emissions for residential wood heating. You would just you would highlight residential wood heating and then click on emissions. But now we would have to go through each of these SECs and look at their descriptions and try to find out which one is associated with residential wood heating. So it's much easier if you enter a process description. We will take a look at what is included in a non-point process. So we'll click on, I'm going to use this second one here. And we can either double click or we can click on the edit button. And I'll click on the edit button and see what kind of data goes into a non-point process. We can see from the source classification code that this is a industrial distillate oil source. And this is where you enter the process description that we highly recommend you do for your own data. But don't tamper with the data that's already from the NEI because you don't want to change anything unintentionally that you don't need to change. So we'll leave that as it is, but I'm just telling you for when you enter your own data. And if you scroll down, you'll see that that's really the only mandatory field for non-point emission processes is the source classification code. So we'll go ahead and close that, and then we'll take a look at the non-point reporting period. And that, as we've noticed before, this is only the reporting period for this particular process, which is the industrial distillate oil. The important thing to notice here is this estimate button, because this button is the button you need to use to launch calculators and to get those calculators to import the emissions into your TEISS project. And that shows that for this particular process, there's a total of 36 pollutants, and it shows the emissions of each of those pollutants. And you can see in this breadcrumb panel here that you can always look at that and see what SEC you're looking at and what reporting period you're looking at and what the emissions are associated with that particular process. And if you wanted to look at another process, we could click in this next button here to look at the next emissions. So we'll go ahead and do that. It doesn't tell us much because we don't have these numbers memorized about which process is what. So if you had a particular one you wanted to look at, you'd have to go to non-point processes and enter your process description or use the edit button to figure out which numbers these emissions actually represent. And that's why we talked about before that using the reporting option of TEISS instead of linear data entry, it's a lot easier to look at your emissions that way because the reports are set up in a way that's very user-friendly. And it's a lot easier to look at your emissions that way than through the linear data entry. And that's it for looking at non-point data.